Here, Jolene. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Pre-Law Shadowers session. Today we have a very special guest, Jolene Blackbourn from the Legal Learning Center. Jolene, if you would like to take it away, can I introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Landon. So yes, as you said, I am Jolene. I am a California attorney. I have been practicing for almost 20 years now. I spent the majority of my career in workers' compensation. That was kind of I tripped upon that. I had originally had all these other plans and had actually started out in estate planning, which was one of my career choices. But after a few years, I switched over to workers' comp. And then a few years ago, I then started the Legal Learning Center and added on as a side little thing just to keep my toes wet, a little bit of the estate planning again. I started advising, the Legal Learning Center advises pre-law students. The main goal is to save pre-law students or law students money on their legal journey, on every aspect of their legal journey. So money saving strategy starting even before you enter law school. And also to kind of protect their mental health, because a lot of lawyers have so much debt. They have no choice of what job they take. If they find they don't like their job, they can't leave it. They're very stuck. And so it really impacts their mental health. And so it's also very tied, my tips and strategies, to mental health. So those are my two main focuses. So I started out actually when I was still in law school. I took my law fraternity, it was Phi Alpha Delta, and grew it into the largest organization on campus. And my members, I was very close with them. I felt like it was kind of my job as the leader to be close to them. And they really started confiding in me and telling me way TMI, like just not stuff that I had planned on, stuff like my fiance's cheating on me, or, my girlfriend doesn't want me to do summer abroad and I really want to do it. And I want to drop out of law school. And they really expected me to answer these questions or help them. I don't know.
Wow.
And so it was a lot. But I started to see patterns. And so I kept advising, and my Phi Alpha Delta, they actually were flying me around the state to give speeches to pre-law chapters.
Wow.
And so then as an attorney, I just kind of maintained that. I always went back to my law school, and for pre-law chapters, I would give speeches. And then, took it full time in 2019. So now I help pre-law students with courses and counseling. So I still do that counseling of, should I drop out? Should I even be going? I'm not sure I should. Which school should I pick? Which one can I afford? The financial packages are so different. I'm not sure I'm making the right choice. That kind of stuff is what I do counseling on. My course is more money-based. And then I help people with my own podcast, the Legal Learning Podcast. This is my podcast set up here today. And what else? Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
I think that's a wonderful summary. That all sounds absolutely amazing. It's quite incredible how you can really kind of act as someone's therapist, especially when they're in such a difficult sort of rut, whether if they're going to go to law school or if they're going to, maybe forego law school or whatever the case may be. So I think it's absolutely vital that you're able to be there for them, especially someone who's been in their shoes too, probably. So I think it's absolutely incredible. So I guess going back a little bit, when did you kind of first think that, okay, I really want to get into law now and I really want to get into it? Was it like prior to university? Was it going through university? Like, do you mind elaborating just a little bit on that?
Sure. Yeah, I never want to be an attorney. I actually want to be a politician, and most politicians are lawyers. So I was like, okay, so that seems like a natural path. And it also gives me something else to do, because, the minute you graduate, you're not going to become a politician. So you need a job in the meantime before you kind of build up that network and whatever. And so I thought, okay, it's a clear path. Even if I don't become an attorney, I at least have that JD. So I'm on that way for the politics, and I can go get involved or whatever. I can always use that JD. And so if I practice law, again, it's just kind of icing on the cake kind of stuff. And so I did kind of have this feeling in high school, and I just kind of never, I think this is my bad. I didn't really explore other options in college. So I didn't really look around too much. I just was like, well, I kind of like that path. So, and I still like government and politics. So I think I am going to do this. And I mean, it was fine, but I just think I probably should have asked around, looked around, looked at some other options, because obviously you don't have to be an attorney to be a politician. And there's probably some other paths I could have explored. But yeah, so I kind of just by default ended up in law school.
Gotcha. I feel like that's a lot of the way a lot of people go. Like some people don't even understand, or they don't even know, like, I don't need to be in political science, criminology, whatever the case may be. They can go into law school with really any degree. So that's one thing I know. Like I personally just graduated. So it's something that a lot of my friends talk to me about, because I was always telling them I'm interested in law school. Some of them have business backgrounds and they go, hey, can I go into law school too? I'm like, absolutely you can. You have to write your LSAT though. So I guess that kind of transitions into my next question. Obviously you've taken the LSAT if you went to law school. How did you find the LSAT? And do you think that there was any misconceptions that people have about the LSAT?
Yeah. It's funny because I've blocked what my score was. And I recently went back and I was like Googling, can I get my score after all these years? And apparently not. So like, bummer. I don't know why I forgot. I just remember I was happy with my score. But I was a logic games person. I loved the games. I've never been good at reading comprehension. So of course that has to be on like every standardized test on earth. So I was very frustrated with that part. Although I hear most people hate the logic games, and I hear they might even be doing away with that, which bums me out because again, it was just my strong suit. I just loved, even if I didn't naturally know the answers, I mean, just learning the tips and tricks, I loved that. So yeah, I don't have any specific LSAT advice as far as, the test itself, but I will say that what I see a lot of pre-law students doing is hopping from course to course or tutor to tutor because, this thing isn't working and that thing isn't working. And there are some free resources out there, like Khan Academy, and some people literally have only studied through books they bought on Amazon or through thrift stores. I mean, they spent like $1 on a book and they were done. You can do some free resources first and find out what works for you and what doesn't, and kind of pay attention to what type of learner you are, whether you're visual or whatever, auditory, and then try and find a course or tutor that works well with what you need, and then also what wasn't working and what you tried for free.
Gotcha.
So that way you might save a little money.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think it's one of those things that some people think, especially you need to be, let's say, in law to do really well in the LSAT too, when obviously that's absolutely not the case, but it's something that I guess a lot of people have misconceptions and believe in. So I think that that's something that obviously may factor someone either going to or doing away with law school. So when you entered into law school, how was your experience with law school? Do you think that you had any misconceptions from what you thought to what it was actually like? And then afterwards, can you give us maybe a little bit of advice what some misconceptions some other students might have, maybe that come into the Legal Learning Center or anything like that?
Absolutely. So yeah, I was really looking forward to law school. I had taken a few years off, so I really, was ready to get back into school. I love school. And one thing I didn't like was that they really seem to treat you like children. And it can be a little surprising because, you've already graduated from, university, and then, so you should know what to do. Every school's a little bit different with their rules, but, a lot of them have attendance requirements. Some of them will lock you out of the classroom if you're more than 5 minutes late, so you can't attend at all. Which I'm sorry, but living in LA, our traffic patterns are crazy. So it's a hit or miss sometimes, and it's just merciless. But even things like, they tell you in law school what you should be doing. So first year, you take all the same courses. And then second year, you have a few electives, but you still have some things you should be kind of doing. You're supposed to be trying out for moot court or trying to get on law review and trying to do all these things. And they tell you you should, to the point where you feel like you have to. And it's almost like when your parents tell you like, well, you have a choice, but you know what the right one is. And it's like, come on, I'm an adult. I don't want to do that. Well, you're not going to get a job if you don't do that. And it's like, how do you know what type of job I want? And so it was very frustrating for me going in saying, look, I don't even necessarily think I'm going to take the bar exam. So don't tell me what to do. And so I fought the school tooth and nail on every single thing, which is, I think, how I discovered a lot of my like money saving tips and things like that, is because I was doing things so differently. Like I refused my first summer to have a legal job. I just refused. I was so tired and burnt out. I just was like, I bleached my hair blonde, and I was on the beach at least once a week. And I actually taught at an elementary school. That's all I did. Oh, I was a TA. I didn't even teach. I was a TA. So I played handball, Connect Four. I had a great summer. It was great. I was totally refreshed for second year, but they tell you what you should do and they make it sound like that's what you have to do. I still worked for a Fortune 100 company. I still am like the only person I know that has been to the California Supreme Court. I've had a great career. I don't need them telling me what to do with my summer and how to do law school. As long as I'm graduating and of course pass the bar, leave me alone. So that is something that was a huge misconception for me, was that I'm an adult and I'm going to take courses and I don't know, determine my future. And the law school was like, no, we're going to tell you what to do and you're just going to do it. So so that's something I think to just be aware of, is that they're going to tell you a lot what to do. And you just need to evaluate what your values are and where you're trying to go. If you're trying to get into a top firm, then you got to do all the things they're telling you to do. But like, I never want to do litigation, which funny enough is my nickname was trial queen at my office. So, but I never wanted to. And so I found myself enrolling to do moot court. And then I realized as soon as I enrolled, I was like, wait, why am I trying out for this? Like, I don't want to do this. Why? It's clearly some kind of pressure that was there. Right. And so unfortunately, once you sign up to try out, you have like a person you're opposing, so you have to. And so I had to try out, but what I did was I made the least effort possible just to help the other person, but to not get on moot court. But then I felt like, God, they think I'm stupid. But I just was like, I don't want this. And so, it's very hard when you're there to fight the mold. So just really check in with yourself, stay true to yourself, because that's how people become miserable attorneys, is they're doing what others tell them to do and not what they want to do.
Right. No, that absolutely is fair. I think that's something that happens even just with university students, right? They kind of go through first year and go, is this really for me? You know, maybe they didn't do so well in one class or whatever the case may be. But it sounds like it's a little bit more strict and a little bit more, I guess, tyranny in a law school, obviously.
It is.
So you mentioned that you were hired onto a Fortune 500 company. So clearly your break that you had for the summer must have paid off somehow. Was that sort of getting into that sort of career and into that sort of form of law, was that something that you really wanted to go into, or was it something that an opportunity just happened and then that became your best option?
So for me, I graduated, I was the first graduating class after September 11th. And what happened with September 11th was, and this isn't really talked about out there, they talk about 2008 a lot, but in 2002, everybody was laying off because the World Trade Centers were full of law firms and their sister firms were in Chicago and they were in Seattle and they were in LA. And so all the sister firms were struggling. And, you know, a lot of payroll was done in New York as well. So even if your payroll department was there, it was just a mess. So what happened was all these firms who had been hiring and overspending, and literally I had friends who graduated like maybe 4 years before me. So they were making like in the hundreds of thousands within like, you know, a year or two. And all of a sudden they were all laid off. So now they have houses they bought and things like that. They have bills and they have no jobs. And so they have 3 to 5 years experience. And now they're competing for the jobs that are 0 to 3 years because they'll take anything. And so those of us graduating, we're competing with these people who already have experience.
Right.
But the other thing that happened was the government shut down And anyone who had been promised a job, even if you were working there as a clerk, as a third-year law student, if you weren't already an attorney, they could not offer you a job anymore. And all job offers
Oh,
were off
wow.
the table. Yeah.
Wow.
So that went for 5 years. There was a 5-year hiring freeze with the government. So
Wow.
all those people, the people who either had jobs or would have normally applied, they
Mhm.
were in competition with us as well. So we were a
Wow.
mess. It was really bad.
Wow.
Um, so people were just taking jobs, whatever they could take. Now for
Right.
me, because I'm stubborn, I was like, no, like my very last semester of law school, I took wills and trusts and I loved it. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And this is what I'm going to do. Well, when no one has money, they're not going to pay money for a will or a trust.
Right.
And most of the firms are mom and pop, like just, small one solo type person. And so I struggled to find a job. I found a part-time job, and then I opened my own firm and had some clients. But after 2 years of struggling to make ends meet, I finally accepted my friend's offer that she kept extending to go into workers' comp. And
Okay.
for me, I just thought, that's the devil's work. I'm going to hate it. I don't want to do that, but I really need to pay some bills here. So I ended up loving it. So I was very lucky. I was on the insurance side, so the defense side. So taking down all the liars and trying to find
Okay.
benefits for those who I felt were not lying. So making sure the
Okay.
insurance company knew, hey, get them some treatment.
Mhm.
So it was a great position. It was a medium-sized firm. And after a few years there, then I went into traveler's insurance and worked in-house there. So again, I just kind of all tripped. I will tell you though that networking is the most important thing to get a job. Again,
Okay.
my summer off, right? I obviously didn't matter towards my career path, right? So they're telling
Right.
you, oh my gosh, you're destroying your whole career path. No, I made a BFF in law school, and she's the one who got me the job in the mid-sized firm. When I worked in the
Wow.
mid-sized firm, then, I made friends with all the other attorneys. One of them left to go work at Travelers. And then I met up with her one day. We ran into each other at court. We were just talking, and I decided, you know what? She's making more over there and has more benefits. I should really move on. And so,
Yeah.
um, I just said, hey, next time you're hiring, which turned out they were hiring. So, it's all about networking. And
Right.
I mean, just most of the things that have happened have all been because of networking. And then, of course, obviously, you have to prove your own self too. But
Mhm.
it's really not so much. All my internships in law school were actually like nonprofit based and stuff like that. So, because my original thought was environmental law until I realized I
Okay.
couldn't afford to pay my loans with that. So,
Oh.
so that kind of got pushed aside. But all my internships were environmental based. So,
Okay.
it had nothing to do with anything I ended up doing. So yeah, you're not destroying yourself. Go have fun, just be productive in some way and know how to
Mhm.
present yourself and network.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. And I mean, it's something that people think of. They watch like a show like Suits or another famous dramatized show, right? And they go,
Yeah.
well, when I go into law, it's going to be strictly just like this. Or, when I go into court, it's going to be this big back and forth argument with these massive words that people are throwing around when a $5 word will work just fine.
Yeah.
So I think I think that that's an amazing answer, and I really really appreciate you giving us that insight. So once you kind of got into, I guess, workers' comp or wills in the States and that sort of stuff, what was kind of the really like something that really opened your eyes up, that was a really eye-opening experience for you, I guess, either be it maybe with a case or maybe something that happened
Yeah.
within the job or something like that? Is there any way you could elaborate on something like that?
Yeah, sure. So I had a case once that this guy was traveling for work. And when you travel for work in California, everything's covered. I mean, you can do the stupidest thing on earth and it's going to be covered as part of the work trip, basically. So this
Wow.
guy was,
Okay.
yeah, he was part of a catering company for the movies, and the movie was taking place on location in Hawaii.
Okay.
So it is still considered a California job. And so he was there with his crew, and it was the 4th of July. So, holiday here, and they were not working. That's fine. That's still something that would be covered though if there's an injury there. So they're drinking. Okay, if you can prove that the intoxication caused the injury, then it's accepted. Um, and so they're drinking. He hasn't had a whole lot to drink though. He goes into the pool area. He walks past the shallow end to the deep end where his friend is swimming. He takes off his shirt and shoes and then walks back to the shallow end and dives head first into the shallow end.
Oh.
Yeah, snapped his neck. It was an incomplete paralysis. The guy was 37 with 5 kids.
Wow.
Yeah. So we know he's injured. We know that while traveling, he is going to be covered for just about anything. But this is a very large lawsuit and they really don't want to pay this. So
Yeah, wow.
how
Really?
can we get
Oh my
out?
gosh.
So all the way up the chain, because when you have a case like that, it's not just you anymore. It's all the way up the chain in corporate. You know, they all want to make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. So
Mhm.
they're all involved, lots of conference calls. And it's like, okay, we all know you're going to lose, but you still need to take this to trial because you just, you know, we need to show the client we tried everything to avoid this $1 million lawsuit.
Mhm.
And, you know, in workers' comp, most cases are worth not that much. So nowhere near that much. So,
Right.
so this was a big one. And so, you know, I tried to throw out all the different things like, well, you know, we don't know if he was impaired or not, but there's an indication he was impaired because obviously why would you walk to the deep end and then walk back to the shallow end? I mean, that shows impairment, right?
Yeah.
But the law says I have to prove it, not imply it, not infer it. So that doesn't work. There's a horseplay exception, but there's no indication here that he was playing around like people were pushing him in a pool or something.
Mhm.
There's really just no exception. So I just told the judge, it's not fair. I just said, just when you put it all together, it's not fair. It's not fair to ask an employer, this is so far beyond the reach. It's not just a swimming accident. It's not just a, you know, tripping accident. It's multiple things put together to make this really weird accident. And it's
Mhm.
not fair. And I won on that theory.
Wow.
And it was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, what?
Wow.
So, I mean, my boss, I mean, everyone up the chain was like, how did you win this? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. So,
Wow.
yeah. So the point there, aside from that really stood out in my mind, it
Yeah.
is always just give it a try, give it a go, don't give up. You know, that's the point of law, is to represent your client to your fullest extent. And when you've
Mhm.
got nothing else, I mean, just saying something like, it's not fair. The totality of the circumstances don't add up fair. I mean, again, law isn't really about what's fair necessarily, but yeah, that worked. So yeah, that really helped my career a bit.
That's an unbelievable story. I can't believe that. I
I
can't believe
really
it.
can't
That's a,
believe it.
I hate saying it like this. I can't believe you won, but that's absolutely fantastic and incredible that you won.
Yeah.
But obviously it took a lot of work and you put your heart and soul into it and it came out on top and you benefited from it. So you really helped someone with it. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning prior when you were in law school and going through law school, you were feeling kind of burnt out and whatnot. Did that inspire you to develop the Legal Learning Center, or was that something that just came about? Like, do you mind elaborating a little bit more on how you started the Legal Learning Center?
Sure. Yeah. I think that was part of it, was just that I get so frustrated, you know, constantly hearing about all the shoulds, right? All the things you should do, when it's like, I mean, I'm not kidding. Even at graduation, they tried to tell me where to sit and it wasn't with my friends. And I was like, you know how much I pay for this education? I'm gonna sit next to my friends at graduation. Sorry.
Yeah.
They're like, but your parents won't know. And I don't care. This isn't, no, they'll see me cross the stage. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So part of it was just to share with more students all the options that are available, and also just the alternatives, you know, that you don't necessarily have to go to an ABA approved school. I had somebody on my podcast, it hasn't aired yet, just the other day, where she was talking about a master's of law. If you're someone like me who wasn't necessarily dedicated to becoming an attorney, but really wants some of those skills and wants some of that career related stuff. And it's just, you know, it's amazing all the information that's out there, but we don't know about it. And so
Mhm.
that's part of what really drove me. I've been wanting to do this for years, and, you know, and I've been working the corporate life and all that kind of stuff. And so it was a matter of timing. And it's funny because it started right before COVID, and it really is a COVID friendly job. So
Okay.
it
Yeah.
worked out kind of perfectly there, because it was meant to
Absolutely.
be, yeah, just a remote like this. So
Mhm.
but yeah, it really was to share with students all the things I wish I had known. and just a lot of the misconceptions.
Right, absolutely. It sounds like an awesome, absolutely incredible initiative that you're doing. Do you want to maybe share some of the success stories, I guess, that you've had with some of your students or some of your clients,
Yeah.
or elaborate a little bit more on that? Yeah.
Sure. So I had one student, his name was Adrian, and he was dedicated to going to this low ranked school because they had this program in this area of law that he wanted to practice in. And, that's sometimes that is appropriate. It just depends. Anything I tell you, this is a case by case basis, guys. So,
Mhm.
the opposite might be true for you. But for him, he wanted to go to this low ranked school because of the program. And then he had told me I was accepted to this much higher ranked school, and they don't have that program. And we talked it through, and we decided that there is a thing called reciprocity where schools will let you take courses at another school if they don't offer it. So
Okay.
why do you need this program if you can still take the courses? And if this is a higher ranked school in this industry, which one's more important? You need to ask people in the industry what's more important to them. Where do they tend to recruit from? Because yes, they may recruit from that program, but they may also recruit from maybe not schools in between, but that school that's up where you got into. So maybe somebody who got into that program and a school just above it, it's better for them to go to that lower ranked school because it's got the program. But if you're way up here, they may actually care more about that. So,
Mhm.
you have to ask around. And so in the end, he actually ended up going to the other school that he had not been planning to go to at all. And when I talked to him later, he was like, this was the best decision of my life. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm so glad because,
Yeah.
I really, for him, and I don't tell people what to do, but I didn't see it matching up for him.
Mhm.
And, but I've also seen the opposite where people have said, I was getting into these top ranked schools. And then they did, and these aren't people necessarily I helped. This was one person that literally, when I shared that story, she was like, oh, I did the same thing, but on her own. She had done some informational interviews at the last minute with people in the industry, and they had said, we don't recruit from those schools. We only recruit from these. And so she
Oh,
went
wow.
back. Yeah. And she actually, it was late in the game, but she applied to those lower ranked schools and she got in even with money
Wow. That's
and was
incredible.
then at the proper place to get recruited. So, these things happen all the time where you just don't know. You need to actually, that's one of my biggest things is I tell people to do informational interviews in the areas that you're interested in. Because first of all, you might find an area of law is not something you want to do because maybe for the first 5 years, you're going to make like $50,000. And I'm not kidding,
Right.
that is a thing. So, you
Yeah.
know, so if you're like, wait, no, that's not going to work for me, then it's
Mhm.
like, I don't care how much you like the field. Let's just drop that, or
Mhm.
let's make a totally different plan. And that's what I do with people as well, is I will help them make a game plan so they can better afford the schools they're looking at. So most people
Right.
believe that the only way to save money on law school is the LSAT, and that's just
Mhm.
not true. You can use your LSAT to get into your better ranked school, and if
Mhm.
if that's what you want to do, and then there are other ways to save money on law school. So, and things like that reciprocity, sometimes the units at the other school are cheaper. And so sometimes
Mhm.
even if you don't care that much about reciprocity, you might want to check out schools in your law school's area to see, okay, over the summer, maybe I'll take a few units over there because that school's cheaper. And so I'm going to get those units out of the way for cheaper.
Okay.
So there's all kinds of ways to save money on law school. People just are usually too busy to see them. So
Right. Absolutely.
yeah, so that's what I
Okay.
usually help with. So things like choosing between schools. I'm trying to think of some other people. Yeah, I had another girl who had spent 150,000 on undergrad. And so we had to talk through,
Wow.
what are you going to do for law school? She really wanted to go to law school. And I was like, okay, well, then we really need to make that kind of a $0 game because
Mhm.
you've already spent your law school money. So now it's like you're
Yeah.
going to, to university instead. Like this is,
Mhm.
you need to flip the numbers here.
Mhm.
So yeah, so we worked on that for her where hopefully financially she ends up in the same boat as other people and not astronomically worse off than everybody else.
Right. Wow,
Yeah.
that's absolutely incredible. So you deal, I guess, with, I guess you, so would you say the majority of your students or what your clients or people that come to you are discussing mostly financial issues with you? or do you find it's more or less people sometimes maybe they want like a mental health check-in, or maybe they're asking you questions about where to go or what type of law they should get into? Do you mind like kind of going into a little bit more detail about that?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the students are debating between schools, and the big question within that is really more the financial piece of it. So,
Mhm.
what mess am I making by picking a school based on, the finances here? Is
Right.
there a correct financial decision? That's a big one. I do get people who are trying to just make sure that as they start the application process that they're doing it right. And I am not, I mean, I know a lot about the application process, but I'm not, an admissions counselor. So I'm not going to be able to give you, this is the best thing to do on this little thing. But as far
Right.
as making sure you're looking at schools and comparing them correctly, and I shouldn't say correctly, but, in a good way.
Yeah.
um, there's no correct way, but there are ways when you go on the LSAT website to compare schools, to put in your GPA, to put in your LSAT score, and to really look at these schools. And if you look at them without geography, just based on where can I get in, where would it be a reach, and kind of play your game from there, and then say, okay, look, there's just no way I'm ever going to move to Florida. It's way too humid there. And so, okay, fine, eliminate that school. But you might find some higher ranked schools that don't cost more, that you could actually get into if you just do a blanket search based on your stats, instead of doing this, well, I want to be in New York City. And I'm not saying you can't end up in New York City, but it's good to
Right.
open your mind and make sure you see your options, because if there's a school in Nebraska that, yes, I know you don't want to go to Nebraska, but if you can see how cheap it would be, and yet how high ranked or how awesome their programs are or whatever it is, and then you choose to go to New York and spend a fortune, at least in the end, when you're drowning in debt, I chose this. I had this other option. I chose it. And
Right.
that's what I help people with, is to see the other options and make sure they're looking at everything. And so, yeah, a lot of times it is on the front end too, like, let's go through this together, make sure you're on track to save as much as possible, or just know your options as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Understandable. Just even when you alluded to that point, I know personally, like here in Ontario where we are, the law schools are, well, the most expensive in all of Canada. And then if you go out to Quebec, out to BC, obviously it gets a little bit cheaper. So I think that's obviously, when you brought that up, that's something you must deal with a lot of, like, hey, just because you want to live in this state, province, we say in Canada,
Yeah.
province, maybe it's the best choice for you, but maybe financially it's not the best choice for you. So it sounds like you obviously take that into consideration. You have to maybe counsel someone through that. And I mean, most of these people are pre-law students, right? They're still young individuals, and you've had the experience and the ability to see firsthand, maybe this may have been a mistake for me, perhaps, but it corrected me this way, whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, and it comes back to networking again, because people are afraid to go, outside of where they want to work. And while the prevailing advice is, if you want to work in a certain city, like Toronto, for example, you should go to a law school in or near Toronto. And yes, that is still good advice, but it's not everything, because if you're expanding your network, and especially with the internet, with LinkedIn and things like that, we can connect strongly with people in Toronto, even though we're not there. And
Right,
so there's no reason why you can't still easily make a transition to another city after you graduate. So again,
right.
something to keep in mind.
Okay, absolutely. What would you say your favorite thing is about the Legal Learning Center? Is it maybe, being able to communicate with everyone that comes through the door? Would it maybe be just obviously each person's situation isn't the same, right? So it's not the same repetitive work all the time. What would you say your favorite sort of aspect of the Legal Learning Center is for you?
I love getting, I get a lot of DMs, um, and occasional reviews and so forth, or whatever, like on LinkedIn or whatever. But like, and you can probably hear my dog out there now, where people will say, like, you have changed my perspective. That is what I love, is that
Right.
I can post on LinkedIn or post on Instagram and just randomly get a DM from somebody I've never talked to before. And they'll just say, you've totally changed the way I think about this. And it's like, thank you. That is what I want. I don't necessarily want to change your path. I mean, maybe, but like, it just depends on what's right for you. But I want to make sure you're thinking about it differently. And yeah, I had a girl, I think she was, gosh, it was about 4 or 5 months into the pandemic, and she messaged me and she was like, "You've changed the way I think because of you. I'm not going to be an attorney." And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. She was in
Mm.
an LLM program. I said, so slow down, slow down. So
Wow.
you've had 4 years of
Wow.
law school, and you're not even going to practice at all. She goes, "Yeah, I always thought I might practice for a few years, but no, I'm just not even going to do that at all." And I'm like, wait, okay, you're scaring me. You're scaring me. We've never even talked. Like, just
Right. Yeah.
read a handful of my LinkedIn posts.
Mhm.
And I don't think I got really active with LinkedIn until February, March, I don't know, right around the pandemic time. So she couldn't have been
Okay.
following me for that long. So
Right. Okay.
I was like, can we just at least, you know, we don't have to do a full consult, but I just, for my own safety, need to feel secure in your choice here. Can we talk?
Right.
And so it turns out she was already thinking that, but I think she just felt very alone and
Mhm.
insecure and like, why did I do all this, you know? And
Right.
so it just really kind of helps solidify she's not alone. This happens every day. People go to law school and then they turn left, you know? So
Right.
so yes, and so I was actually able to then connect her with people who are in the field that she's interested in. So that was wonderful too. So I love those messages of people coming to me and just saying, "Thank you. I'm thinking so differently now," and that's all I want.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's probably the best part of it.
Yeah,
No matter which way you really look at it, you really want to find your niche or whatever you're really good at and do something you enjoy, right? When you're going to go to
exactly.
work eventually, whatever you do, you want to enjoy it, right? It doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter what the money is, depending on who you ask, perhaps, but it really is. It's really about going to work every day and enjoying what you do, right? So
Yeah.
I think that that's huge. Just maybe on a personal, just on the side, do you only deal with, I guess, American law students? Have you had any Canadian or internet, like maybe international students, kind of reach out to you, or
Yes.
anything like that?
Yes. So
Excuse me.
I've had a lot of international students reach out to me, which I can't really help them. I mean, it depends on what they need help with, I guess. But um, I mean, all my tips and advice are generally, except for mental health stuff, are generally US
Mhm.
based, right? The financial piece is US based. If they
Right.
are coming over here for, and a lot of my strategies apply to just law school, they don't really apply so much to the LLM program, which is what a lot of the
Mhm.
international students are trying to do. So
Right.
so I can't really help them so much. I usually have maybe like one tip or something for them, and just I just give that to them for free because it's like, okay, I'm not going to say, hey, sign up for my course when you know it's one tip, but yeah, Canadian. I mean, if people are coming here, right, for the actual JD program, then I can
Mhm.
help them because they're going to be then employing our finances, the classes, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And it's interesting because I just had a UK student as an intern, and I'm waiting for her final report. She's supposed to give me some more tips and tricks on maybe how I can use my strategies to help UK students, which then would open the door to, again, there's so many, you know, with all the colonies the UK had, right? So there's a lot
Yeah.
of legal systems around the world that follow the same model. So then I can probably help those people as well.
Right. Okay.
So I'm waiting for her report to tell me because I would love to know that maybe some of my tips help other students.
Right. Absolutely. That's absolutely fantastic.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the things, especially I noticed, just being someone who just recently graduated. A lot of my friends or colleagues, just bringing up UK, they want to go apply to law school in the UK because they don't need the LSAT there or anything like that. Do you ever get any questions sort of along that sort of line, or maybe pre-law students going, I want to apply, let's say, somewhere to another country to maybe travel or experience something different or anything like that?
Yeah. So, you know, it's funny too, because I didn't know this when I was in law school, but there is a year abroad. I mean, there's definitely a summer abroad because I did that. So I know there's that, but there's a year abroad and semester abroad in law school as well, which I did not know when I was in law school. So there are ways, I mean, it's probably still a very US based system, but you can still go
Yeah.
over there and have some exposure, at least to the culture and probably to some internships and things like that over there. I don't know a whole lot about the semester or year abroad programs, but
Right.
yeah, I know the summer abroad I did mine in Oxford, and they did make sure that we went to the Oxford courts and we got to see a trial in action. And I mean, so I learned a lot about it just in that one day. You know, my courses were not based on, you know, how do they run their courts, but just that one
Right.
day, that field trip, you learn so much by doing, right? So
Hmm.
just seeing, I mean, it's so different. It's just so,
Yeah, absolutely.
so different. I mean, their defendant was sitting in the back, whereas in the US, it's basically been proven if you're not sitting right next to your defendant, if you're kind of inching away, it almost makes it the jury and so forth think maybe you think your client is not safe, at like in criminal
Right.
law and stuff. So
Okay.
there's this whole strategy and psychology behind it in the US, but over there they got the defendant sitting in a box by himself in the back, and it's like, you okay back there, buddy? I mean, like, it's interesting. So
Yeah.
yeah, I highly recommend it. And actually, summer abroad is one of my top recommendations for law students, because again, it just frees your mind a little bit. You feel a little more restored to go back to school. If you can do a semester
Mhm.
or a year, that'd be amazing.
Right.
But it really does. And there are ways to make it work financially to your advantage. So you can actually, it's one of my money saving tips. So people think it's expensive, but if you do it right, you can actually save money.
Wow, incredible. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I think that's something that a lot of people really think of, especially that you just brought that up. You know, I really want to go travel the world, travel abroad. Maybe it's their parents saying, you know, what are you doing? Are you crazy? You need to jump into the workforce. You got to pay off this debt, whatever the case may be, or just maybe themselves going, I don't have time. I need to go myself and get into the workforce, get into my career,
Yeah.
or my friends aren't doing it, therefore I can't do it, whatever the case may be. So I think that it's absolutely wonderful that you provide that mentorship to give them that outlet, I guess you could say. So as someone, I guess, who's you know, is an amazing speaker to start, and is a keynote speaker that speaks out at universities kind of throughout America and provides all this fantastic advice and these vital resources to everyone. To everyone here in attendance, what would be, I guess, the central, I guess, summarized, maybe conclusive piece of advice that you could give to the pre-law students that are in the attendance today?
Ooh, loaded question. Okay, let's see. So I think a lot of us as attorneys or prospective attorneys, we're on that path. We think that we're very, we tend to be pretty driven, pretty organized, and pretty we have a lot of ambition. And we forget that we have a creative side too. And some of us even think we don't have that creative side. But the more you let that creative side out, the more you're going to um, be open to exploring. And when you explore, you find, again, those money saving opportunities, even just time and stress saving opportunities. You just find more doors, and it leads to more opportunities. When I did summer abroad, I did it second summer, which you're not supposed to do because you're supposed to be serious. And I did have an internship, my dream internship, in fact. And what was I going to do? Because I all of a sudden just totally had the bug. I need to go. And so what I discovered is if I worked from the day after my last final until the day I left town, I could fit in the 8 weeks required for my internship and then fly out of the country and go do summer abroad. And I just made sure to find a program that was at the tail end of summer. And then I came back and went right back into school. So,
Wow. Okay.
but I did both. I did an 8 week internship and I did summer abroad. So get creative, think outside the box. I mean, that's how I won that $1 million trial. Is I was like, okay, I have nothing else to throw at him that's technical. So I'm just going to get creative and be like, I don't like this. It's not fair.
Yeah.
And so anytime that you get creative, for me, I've always won with creativity. So think outside the box. Don't be afraid to, be different, and to question why. Why do I have to do it that way?
Okay.
Most of the time, there's no reason. So
Yeah, that is very true. That's very true. I think that's an awesome piece of advice, and I personally will take it absolutely. So that's all the questions I personally have. I guess we'll open up the question board to people in the audience. So if people want to start, if they want to raise their hand, or if they want to type anything into the chat box, please feel free to go ahead right now. I noticed there's one hand up. So Nada, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask.
Thank you for coming. And I did have a quick question just because I love hearing you talk and your advice. And so I was wondering, where can I find your podcast, or what was the name of the podcast so I can further listen to you?
yeah, it's called the Legal Learning Podcast, and it's on all the app stores, and also on YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. I'm just looking around, seeing if anyone else has any hands up. If anyone wants to type anything into the chat as well, feel free to.
I have a question, Landon, but I can't find the raise hands function at the moment.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. Hi, Jolene. Thank you so much for doing this. So my question was that you mentioned that your original goal is to be a politician. It wasn't necessarily to be a law student. Well, mine is actually also to be a politician, not necessarily to go to law school and become a lawyer. So I was wondering if you had any advice for me, because you also want to be a politician, or if there's anything you wish you did differently.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I wish I had I took 2 gap years. I wish I had taken a little more and spent more time instead of trying to work for a law firm. I mean, I kept trying to get this law experience, but I can tell you that, first of all, if you're not at least in law school, they're not really going to try to show you what it's like to be a lawyer. So your experience as a front desk clerk, filing clerk, secretary is not going to be super in depth as far as what is it like what the attorney does. So I don't find it super valuable. I think it would have been more valuable, for example, for me, since I was interested in the environment, working for a nonprofit and gaining that experience. And then maybe I would have known, first of all, earlier that they don't make that much as attorneys, and maybe would have gone to law school, or I would have known going to law school that I'm going to maybe head in a different direction. And likewise with politics, I think if you can see if there's a way to get involved in your local politics and try to work your way up that chain first a little bit. So first of all, you have a network so that if you do still go to law school, then you at least maybe have an internship already lined up for summer, or you have some connections that you can continue to keep in touch with so that when you graduate, it's a little easier for you to get back into politics. That would be my recommendation, but I definitely would work in the field first, because let's just say that you work in that field and then you're like, I really hate politics. These people are so fake and they work 100 hours a week and I just don't like this. Well, then you can sit back and say, okay, do I still want to go to law school? Is there a purpose for this? Or do I want to do something else? And you don't need to have an answer for that. That's the problem, is especially those of us who are interested in law school, we tend to be very like, I need that path. I need an answer. And again, the girl I just interviewed for my podcast, she was talking about how she went to law school and then she realized it wasn't, like, being a lawyer wasn't for her. And so she tried to find her next it, and she thought she found it. And after 5 years, she just wanted to change again. But she was like, but wait, this was it. This is already my second it. I can't have another it. It's like, no, you can have a million its. You don't have to have one it or two its. So law school will be there. I would try your field first, even though you're not going to maybe get as much experience as an actual politician, but you can kind of get a gist of it, and then see if going to law school, and you can talk to the people while you're working there, right? And you can ask them, do you really think I need to go to law school? Because I know there are definitely, some people need law school to develop that like analytical skill and stuff like that, that helps with politics. And some people are just so naturally brilliant with analyzing and stuff like that, they don't need it, and they can just work their way up the ranks and get into politics without that extra boost. And so maybe you don't need that, or maybe the Masters of Law program will give you what you need. It's a 1-year program. So, but I think networking and getting to know the people in the industry will help you more. And then again, come back and reevaluate if that doesn't work out, or even if it does work out, like whatever advice they give you on what's your best path to get where you have to determine where you want to go. Because again, politics is a big field. Do you want to actually be a politician, or do you want to be like, you know, a lobbyist, or do you want to be, there's so many different things. So try different things out first.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I have another hand up. Harry, if you want to unmute yourself, go right ahead.
Hi, Jolene. Thank you very much for being here. I really like your creative outlook on the law and kind of like giving us, of course, like you said, a different perspective on how to kind of think about having a legal career and what it looks like to, you know, be a legal professional that maybe does things in an unorthodox way, but it works for her. So I had a question about were there any resources that you maybe dive into now or dove into whenever you're in law school that kind of fostered that creativity and allowed you to kind of think in an outside of the box way that worked for you?
That's a really good question. I don't know that there was anything in law school that really, or even after law school, that really fostered it. I think I think just part of the fact that I was so resistant to what they kept telling me to do, they didn't let me be an adult. I think the more they told me what to do, the more I fought them. And of course, at the time, I wouldn't necessarily call that creativity. It was just anger. But then even as practicing, there was nothing that really, I think, sparked my creativity. But it started developing over time, because again, I didn't think I was a creative person at all. I really thought that was like, of the traits in a human, like mine was like kind of missing, so but when I started doing wills and trusts, I remember I had a client who, she had 3 sons. 2 were with her first husband, who was still alive and was going to leave them money, and then the 3rd was with her second husband, who had already passed away, so everything he was going to get was from her. And so she's like, I don't think it's fair that I divide my estate up 3 ways, because my other 2 sons are already going to get more money. So, but I don't know how to do this so that they don't think I favor him, which I kind of think she did anyways, but that's okay. Anyways, but it took us a while, but we finally came up with this plan. We came up with ratios that worked for her. But on top of that, we came up with a letter system. So your trust is it's a formal document, right? So you don't write a letter to people in it. But I told her to write a letter, seal the envelope to each of them, put it with your trust documents. And when you die, they will find these letters and it will explain, this is why you're only getting 15%. This is why you're getting 75%, or whatever the numbers were. And that way, hopefully, they feel better about it. And that was the first time I felt like a little creative, and I really started getting into the wills and trusts, because I felt like we can be so creative here. And then when I went into workers' comp, again, I didn't necessarily feel creative at first, but then I just started to, you see the patterns in the cases. So then I started trying to apply different things to different cases. And it was funny, because then I started hearing from my coworkers when we would bounce ideas off each other, like, you're so creative. Like, no, I'm not. I've never been creative. So I think for me, I had to be told I was creative, and I had to see it a few times before I really felt like I was creative. And then I let it go, and then I was bringing it in. So it can be hard. It's a skill like anything else. I don't feel like any help, any resources, unfortunately. So all I would say is develop that skill.
Thank you very much. That's great advice, and it's very inspiring to kind of like think about things in different ways, because like you said, like the legal kind of system like fosters a thinking that is very like uniform and is kind of like, one-dimensional. So to kind of branch out of that, of course, has worked for you. So I hope that might help either myself or other people here. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And yeah, sorry, I don't have a better answer for that, but I will tell you, I've made many arguments that didn't work. And my opposing counsel would tell me, that's not the law. And I'm like, how do you think laws get made? Because somebody made an argument that wasn't the law, and they took it up and it became law. That's how laws are made. So you know what? I don't care if I'm making a bad argument. I'm also making some good ones. And or maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm in a really losing situation. But if it's all I got, at least it makes sense in my mind. So I don't know. I just stopped fearing looking stupid, looking like I don't know what I'm talking about. And I would have people quote case law. That this case says you can't do that. I said, yeah, it's a case, just like this case. And so maybe this case will overturn that case. So yeah, most of my cases didn't do that, but just that one.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any other questions or anything? If anyone wants to type anything into the chat, or if they want to raise their hand and unmute themselves and ask a question, feel free to.
I actually have a question for Jolene. I'm just listening to this, and all of what you're saying is so inspiring. I have so many comments and so much I want to say, but I feel like I'd rather just email you, because I don't think I want to, this could be an even longer session if I just went on. But the one thing that I'm really curious about is you radiate a lot of positivity and confidence, and just being like a female founder of the Legal Learning Center, and you've accomplished so much as well. I just want to know when did your kind of confidence like start? Is there something that happened were you always like this as a kid, or was it just as you grew in your experiences? I know that law school itself really kind of shows you what you did not want to be and what you kind of wanted to fight against. But in terms of just being such a positive and confident person, like where did all of that kind of come from?
So I will say that I am just a little like extrovert, like, yeah, positivity bundle. I fully get it. Even when I give like really scary negative statistics to people, they're like, "You're so sadistic. You say it with a smile." So yeah, I have the positivity is always there. I used to actually be, even though I've always been an extrovert, very, very, very shy, extremely shy. Like people couldn't even hear me talking. And I got to a point where I got really sick of having to repeat myself. And even I couldn't even get my name out, and especially they all heard Julie and I'm like, it's not Julie. But again, I was so shy, I had to repeat myself louder and it was torturous. And so I really liked acting. When I was like 10, I got into acting a little bit and I just decided, you know what, I'm going to act. I'm going to act not shy. And so I started acting not shy, and eventually it just became kind of like nature. But then it's weird because every once in a while I get like a little almost like bipolar where it's like I'm shy and people don't understand why I'm not talking to them. It's like, because I'm always so loud, and it's like, oh no, because my shyness came back right for a moment, sorry. But yeah, so I definitely, I don't know, I wouldn't call it confidence. It was almost like fake confidence that I just kind of kept building on. But I will tell you, when you're in law school and they're calling on you and you're in front of 100 people, you're supposed to give an answer that you don't know. And you don't want to say the wrong answer twice. So in front of 100 people. So I decided on day one of law school that I was going to make sure I was loud. And so when they called on me, I just gave an answer, and I didn't care if it was right or wrong. I mean, of course I care, but like, I just wanted to get it over with, because worst case scenario is I'm wrong and the teacher tells us why I'm wrong and we all move on. And honestly, no one else remembers that. Or I make an idiot of myself, like fumbling everywhere. And then people are like, oh my God, this girl in my class, and then she like threw her books in the air. I don't know, whatever, right? So, and there are definitely stories that I can still remember from early in law school of people so fumbling that, I mean, not to make fun of them, I feel bad for them. To this day, I feel bad for them. They may not even remember, but I feel bad for them. And so it's like, I was like, no, that's not going to be me. I'm just going to say no, and I'm going to say it loud, and I'm going to be right or wrong. I don't care. And honestly, and doing that in law and everything has always served me very well. When I was in contracts class, our contracts professor was a screamer. He only screamed at you. Our homework was to read 2 cases. They were exactly the same, but they had different outcomes. And the question of the day was, what's the difference? Why do they have different outcomes? And of course he calls on me. And I'm like, crap, you're supposed to already have an answer. And I didn't have one because I did the homework. I just couldn't figure it out. And so I was hoping whoever got called on would tell me the answer. And so I didn't, I did it, but I didn't. And so he called on me, and so immediately I'm looking around at my classmates, what's the answer? What's the answer? And they're like whispering all this stuff at the same time. I can't hear them. And so I'm like, crap, I'm just going to have to answer. And so I just said, there is no difference. And he's screaming. He's like, so you read these cases and you just threw up your hands, you just gave up, and you said, there is no difference. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, you're right. Oh my God. Okay. And then I looked at all my friends who had been whispering answers to me, and I'm like, you were all wrong. And you were going to make me wrong. But it was all fake, right? I just was like, I just need to, again, be brave so they don't remember me. Yeah. And do your homework. Yes. Don't do your homework. Just make it up an answer. But yeah, just do it once and get it over with. The worst that happens is you're wrong and no one will remember. But yeah, if you make a big scene, they're going to remember. So yeah. Yeah. So so to answer your question, yeah, it's my confidence has built over time, but it started with a lot of fake confidence. I'm like, I can still feel my old self like freaking out.
Thank you so much for answering my question. And that story, I think that's like the definition of like trusting your gut and just being honest. And sometimes just being straight up, you might be correct, right? And I feel like your experiences and everything, it's like the definition of a fake it till you make it, right? You kind of have to force yourself to, be outside of your comfort zone, and you might find that you actually enjoy that. And eventually it doesn't feel as uncomfortable anymore. And you're like the success story of that. So a lot of us as pre-law students were like, I think for me, the one thing I'm so scared about is law school and that exact experience. I mean, I've seen so many movies and shows where they like call on you in like a huge like lecture hall and you can't look stupid. I mean, I'm thinking Legally Blonde right now. I don't know if you've seen that, but
yeah, it's been a while, but yes, I've seen it.
Of this one scene in Legal Blonde where she's called on and just doesn't know the answer and then looks really stupid, and I'm always like, wow, that's the one thing I don't want to experience. But I really like the advice that you're giving, because a lot of us are going to be in that position really soon, and I guess it's just a matter of trusting yourself, and you don't want to, like you said, repeat yourself and be wrong twice. You might as well confidently be wrong. And I guess if you seem like you don't care in an embarrassing moment, then no one else is going to care and they're going to move on as well.
That's the thing. And and I had, what was it? It was spring semester of my first year. My Civ Pro teacher, he said, oh, we're having a speaker come. And so immediately I turned to my friend and I'm like, we should go snowboarding. We should take the day off and go snowboarding. And like, because it was like, we had just gotten, I think a snowstorm was coming in or something. And it was like going to be one of the last days of the season. And it was going to be a weekday, so nobody will be there. I mean, I was like, we got to go. And so, of course, he's saying you have to be here because X, Y, Z, whatever. I guess he was anticipating people like me. And so then he turns around and he starts talking about a problem. And I'm still talking to my friend. Come on, we got to go. Yes, we go. And wasn't listening to him at all. And he asks a yes or no question and calls on me. And I had not heard a word. And so again, how wrong can you be? It's a 50-50, right? So I was like, yes. And he looks at me like so disappointed. And he's like, how can you get that wrong? And I'm like, I almost gave you the answer. So he turns back to the board. He's like, no, because, and he explains the whole thing again. And when he explained it, once I heard him, it was like, what does 1 + 1 equal? Like, it was so easy. Now, the only thing that saved me from feeling really, really stupid was, I think the entire class, because I was actually sitting kind of like more or less in the front row, I think they probably knew I wasn't listening. So, because it was such a dumb question so to get wrong. So that's how I made myself feel a little better, but the professor definitely apparently thought I was listening and was just that dumb. So, yeah. So it could go either way. Yeah, it's okay. It'll be okay.
Thank you so much for answering.
All right, does anyone have any other questions? Anyone want to type anything into the chat or any other further questions before we stop this?
Oh, and I forgot, there was a part of her question. She had said she wanted to email me. If anybody wants to email me, it's just Jolene at Legal Learning Center.
Perfect. I will type that into the chat right now.
Yeah.
At Legal Learning Center. And then I will end this. Do you have anything you want to finish off with, or any further advice you want to give to the few that are still here?
Sure. Yeah. I'm everywhere on social media, so you guys are welcome to connect, follow, whatever the word is, depending on the app. But literally from TikTok to LinkedIn, I'm everywhere. I have a Facebook group. You guys are all welcome to join. It's the Pre-Law Advisory Group. But basically on my website, legallearningcenter.com, there's a link tree there, and you can find all the platforms there. There's also, I'm giving my own speech in a month, in about 3 weeks. And that's also on legallearningcenter.com. There's a wait list so that you can get the invite. So you guys are all welcome to anything I'm up to. I'd love to, continue the conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you again so much for being here and taking the time to talk to everyone here. This was absolutely insightful, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I love what you guys are doing. This is great. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Happy Mother's Day also to everyone that's out there.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you again, Jolene.
You're welcome. Bye.